So Liverpool are back in the Champions League. How far
you.
do you think you're going to go?
Good question, actually. I mean, you're really asking at a time before they'll have made, well, you hope they'll have made more signings. If the squad gets deeper and Liverpool get one of those two targets, I think they'll make it out of the group stages. It really comes down to how well the front six for Liverpool gel. And when I say that, I mean the different threes that he wants to pick.
Yeah.
Didn't really play Coutinho very deep in the last game. And if they sign Keita, he'll struggle to play him deep again because you've got so many players to please in that midfield. We'll see about that. I'll be interested to see that, like a four of Coutinho, Firmino, Salah, plus one. So you'd imagine that could be anyone from Divock Origi to, Daniel Sturridge or something like that. But very rarely do you see him playing Sturridge and Firmino, though that would be a very satisfying shape. What it does give is gives Liverpool a lot of options, and it also gives them a lot of chance to change. We were talking on our podcast the other day about the idea that Liverpool don't need to press in the way they used to, and actually they're getting much better at pressing, so they're more efficient at pressing now because they've almost understood it. Originally, it was just about herring about the pitch.
Because it's nuance, isn't it? The gegenpress. It's not just fucking tear ass after everybody without fucking thought about it. It is quite nuanced at the highest level, and yeah, maybe they can conserve energy better by doing it more efficiently next season.
Well, Coutinho's pressed already. You can sort of see. Is better. His technique is better at intercepting the ball. He's a stronger person physically now. He's a stronger player, and that certainly makes him better at tackling. Makes him better at closing someone in. Makes him a better player overall for Liverpool and Klopp's system. I don't know if every manager wants that, but it's hardly something you don't want. He still has a turn of pace. He's still very light on his feet when he needs to be. I think Liverpool can get to the quarterfinals in the Champions League. Realistically, that's maybe as far as they're going to push, because Klopp's got that factor of. I think partly why Liverpool fans like it is because they remember that Europa League run and they sort of feel there's an element of Klopp can do this. He got Dortmund there. Why couldn't he get Liverpool there? I don't think it's unrealistic to say that's the furthest I think Liverpool could go though.
His Dortmund team was a lot more complete than this Liverpool team, though.
But I think that's what I'm saying. We've not made all those signings that Liverpool need to make up the summer.
Can you do them all in this window, though? Or do you think it's... Because I think it's... as much as I don't want to say let's have patience with Jürgen Klopp and give him the opportunity to build a team that's capable of actually doing something.
But in the context of this conversation,
as a United fan point of view. But yeah, in terms of the wider football world, I'm fucking sick of seeing people getting sacked before their project is close to completion, and I think Jürgen Klopp's a top tier manager, and I think you give him the patience and the ability to bring in what he needs, because it's not necessarily. Keita, they're talking some obscene amounts of cash to bring him in. I don't understand football fucking transfer fees at the moment. They absolutely blow my mind.
But I think part of the Naby deal is, because I can pronounce his first name the way that I imagine he wants it said, is that what that does is that gives some validity to the project from a Liverpool fan perspective. It also gives some validity from the fact that a lot of people question the owners over the summer. You're not part of that Liverpool Twitter bubble, so I'm not saying you don't know because of that. I'm just saying, like, seeing that on a daily basis, you see a lot of people are actually quite critical of FSG and sort of saying, well, it's very easy for FSG to say, well, we tried for these big guys, but the club's blocked it. We tried for Virgil van Dijk, but Southampton blocked it.
That's what Arsenal seem to do a lot of, don't they? Oh, we bid. You might bid with no intention of buying. And do you see an element of that here, or do you think they're bidding earnestly and trying to get that player?
I just spent 40 million on Salah. 40 million is still quite a lot of money. It's still a very earnest investment. They've upped the wages of the players they want to keep. And if Keita came to the club, they'd probably do the same again. They'd probably make him another one of the top earners within the squad. Not 150,000, but he'd be a very high earner. And the same for Van Dijk. I think Van Dijk would certainly be. I think he wanted something like 200 grand a week, which was partly what people were talking about. I think we'll see Liverpool press and press and press, ironically, in the window, because it's going to take for these players to say, I want to leave this club, even internally, in order to get them. And I think then you'll see some sort of project validity, and at least that gives the fans an element of confidence, because what they're seeing is someone out there that A, they knew wanted to come to the club and therefore pressed to come to the club, and B, someone who Liverpool has spent a lot of money on, and it's going to be played differently to a Pogba deal or something like that, I think.
How far off a title-winning side are you?
I think Liverpool are 4, maybe 5 players off a title-winning side.
It's a lot of players. It's a couple of windows.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely this window, and maybe it's the January window. I think they're further off than they want to be. But then the 2 signings, maybe 3 with Robertson from Hull City, are shrewd signings. You definitely say Salah's a great signing for a Klopp side. You know, it's almost a no-brainer. And then the fact that he's going to be playing alongside someone like Mane, alongside someone like Firmino, alongside someone like Coutinho, is just mouth-watering for Liverpool fans. Tactically, it's fantastic, because you've got so much force, you've got so much pace, you've got so much pressure within that side, that it means that going into a match against someone like Manchester United, someone like, I don't know if you're in the Champions League, someone like Real Madrid, you've got that element where Liverpool fans are going to be like, okay, we don't have the Galacticos, but we can press the hell out of this team and we can make it as a very uncomfortable night for them. I think Liverpool fans are much happier having pushed aside and gone out 1-0.
He was very high scoring last season, and I think that was a lot of the times when you lost, it was on the back of like some madness with a very high scoring game. Is Van Dijk gonna be enough?
No, I don't. It's a good question of whether it'll be enough. I mean, paired up with a left back who is a left back, maybe. I think because of the way that Hull played last season, it'll be very weird to say that Robertson is going to fit or not going to fit. And again, you sort of see the way that Klopp's like I don't know a game exactly, but you know when you apply, so I don't know, you've got like a base card in like a Pokemon style game. Klopp's like an upgrade to one of those. Klopp's like evolves a player. Don't do a True Geordie stylized. Klopp's like the kind of manager that evolves a player.
You just mentioned Pokemon. I'm 33 as fuck, mate.
I can clearly tell. But you know what Pokemon is. You know the concept of Pokemon.
I'm aware of Pokemon. I don't know what it is, though. I don't know how you play Pokemon.
Okay, but you know the basic idea of a sort of a battling game. You know, I mean, you can.
I've never played one.
You can upgrade. Okay, so I don't know. Say you're playing COD or something like that. He's like an
now,
add-on.
if you was talking about food, and you say when you go to McDonald's, they ask you if you want a medium or do you want to upgrade to a large. Is that what you're talking about?
No, it's not about upgrading to a large. It's not about that, Steve. You're missing the point. It's about, put it this way. It's about when you buy 5 chicken selects, and you're a 5 chicken select man, right?
Minimum. I mean, then is that my entree? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no, that's part of it. But you buy 5 chicken selects, and they say to you, what kind of sauce do you want? Klopp's the sauce that takes those 5 chicken selects to the next level. He's sweet chili sauce.
Okay.
He did it with Chan. He did it with arguably Lovren. He's not had that effect on the goalkeepers yet. I think that's part of it. It's not even so much about Van Dijk. I think Liverpool have got some very competent centre backs there who played in the right system, could do well. But it's about the goalkeeper as well behind that and giving them confidence and shoring up the left side and then even arguably the right side with a run of Klein and Trent Alexander-Arnold performances.
Who's finishing high, United or Liverpool?
It's a very good question. I don't want to be quoted on this because I still think the transfer has a long way to go. I think I'm going to almost blame the person who's doing the interview there because I think that's a stupid question.
Not really.
With this, do you mean with this current team?
I understand that you've got players to buy. We're saying we're 50% done in the transfer window, so we're not done yet. I think we're aware of who we're in for, but we've not got them over the line. As it stands right now, with what you're aware of likely to be coming in, who's finishing higher?
I still think United will finish higher. I think Liverpool could push for a third.
Behind United and?
I think Chelsea will struggle to go that far again, especially if they have the problems with Costa. But then, I mean, we wrote them off last season. Bayern United and City or United and Chelsea?
I'm with you on it. Your screen's frozen a little bit, so hopefully that's not going to stay that way. But I'm going to keep talking. There we go.
No, go for it. As long as I was frozen thoughtfully, that's fine, but it wasn't. I know it wasn't. Yeah.
No, you never freeze in a nice pose on Skype. It always screws you.
It's always midway through chat.
I've tried to go through like the top 6 or 7 and sort of try and assess what they're doing at the moment in the transfer market, where they are as a club, what that's going to mean. I think you and Chelsea are both going to struggle with Europe. I think you more than them, as it stands at the moment, just because of the depth of the squad. I thought it needed a ton of reinvestment, and if you're only going to throw in a couple of signings, good signings as they are, and they are good signings, I don't think that gives you the depth. I thought you was harder with the press, but if you think that they're going to be more efficient with the press, maybe it's not so much of an issue. But I do think
I still think he's going to run the players hard. I mean, that's part of the problem with it, is that you start the season with a full complement, you end the season with Liverpool bare bones. Liverpool bare bones by the time that they... I mean, bare bones as much as Coutinho and, being able to start Firmino is bare bones, but still not being able to rotate players counts as bare bones come the end of the season. You need Lallana to be able to go a full season. You need someone like Haita coming in to be able to go a full season. And you'd argue if you've got those players new signing in, you don't know necessarily how far you can push them in the first season. So we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of variables with Klopp. I think that's the main problem with Klopp and Conte. You've got two guys who are as much an inspirational manager as they are a tactical manager. And it sort of makes it tricky because...
Yeah, there's a lot of adrenaline in the dressing rooms rather than... Both of them are quite high energy in terms of how they are on the touchline. I think that animates into the team itself. And I think the team plays with a lot of high energy. And I think you both benefited massively from the week in between games. I think the travel and the extra game midweek is going to have a bit of an effect on both of you, and it remains to be seen who that affects the most at the moment. They're not getting the signings that they want, but they are strengthening around the back.
I think that's a bit of a fallacy, to be honest.
Do what?
I think that's a bit of a fallacy. I think just people are... I think people know Conte can be unsettled. I also think they know Chelsea fans are going to be the fans that are most nervous because, they've clearly won the league. It makes them very clickable. It makes them... The problem is there's now this industry of transfers, which means that people are going to just print absolute bullshit, even more so than in the past. So, if Conte, the rumours of Conte leaving can permeate, then great, because it means we can get a load more clicks.
Oh yeah, but when you look at what's actually happening in terms of Costa being over on holiday in a fucking Atletico Madrid shirt, saying sling it to Conte, things aren't all harmonious in that dressing room.
No, but let's put it this way. And then, I mean, some people are photoshopping Cesc Fabregas comments on it, and that's the problem. Is actually
we live in a post-truth world, my mate.
Yeah, but then that upsets certain fans, and actually, there's fans out there who really care about these clubs, and that's part of it. Is that there's a load of people who don't like legitimately. I know you have a lot of banter online, but you actually really do care about United and how well they
absolutely,
do.
Yeah, but I'm also wise enough to see through 90% of the bullshit that gets put out there and laugh it off.
You also realise, and I think everyone doesn't potentially realise this, the entirety of the body of the Manchester United fans is not like Stephen Howson. And actually, if everyone was like Stephen Howson, then you wouldn't have your channel. You would have, it'd be an awful world. But we would have a very different United fan body, and arguably you could say, well, maybe United Old Trafford would be a different atmosphere. You could say all sorts of things. It's that diversity of the set of fans. In fact, there are some nervous fans. There are some fans in there who are geeks. There are some fans. It's that diversity. I think you were saying this the other day on a stream with Adam McCullough, that it's about that unity between all those fans.
The diversity of fans is like you can't. Nobody represents any fan base. It was because of me and my dad were standing at the top of that iconic road. We were standing at the top of Warwick Road by the statues, just a bit further away from the statues. And I think we was waiting for Adam, who's permanently fucking late. So we was waiting for Adam, and we was just watching the different groups of people. It was almost the stereotypes of every single fucking entity that watches Manchester United walked past us in a 15-minute period. And you're like,
Sikhs, there are Chinese people, there are, there's, I mean, 100%. If I ever think of the Manchester United fans in Old Trafford, I always think of the two guys who used to sit behind Sir Alex Ferguson as the two guys that used to get picked on by the bloody by the far right groups, because it was like, oh, football's gone mad, mate. How can those two sit there? And you're like, well, if they're week in, week out, they're not tourists.
They're there every single fucking week.
Yeah, it's not like they're taking a plane over every week. If they were, then they're investing in your bloody local economy, so they deserve it more than you do. So
there was everything. there was fucking guys with bleached blonde hair and big Crombie coats on that was 70 with 2 hookers either side of them, and going into an exec suite, and you're just asking
about
yourself,
you and your dad.
we're just like, who represents United here? Does he? Do these guys all beard up with Stone Island coats on, or matching Adidas trainers? Do they? And you're like, there's so many different angles and perspectives and everything. I mean, I don't really sing that much. I sing when I'm watching aways, but a lot of the time I'm trying to watch the game and take in what's going on and think about what's happening and how to talk about that afterwards. So I don't normally just lose myself anymore because of the job that I have to do afterwards. So my way of watching football has changed. You know, I still go with my dad, and when I can, I take Jaden as well, and that's one of the fucking greatest pleasures of life, is going watching the football with my son and my dad. It doesn't get much fucking better than that to me. But no one represents United fans. Nobody represents people at Old Trafford. You couldn't. It's too wide a fucking spectrum.
But something we also have to acknowledge is, and this is something maybe that things like Brexit and the Donald Trump thing have spoken to more recently, but in a more aggressive, sort of overtly right way, is actually there is a base community in a lot of communities that feel left behind by the idea that United have to be a global team, the idea that, you know, Liverpool have to be global, you know. And actually, like, there probably is a message, not even a poetic message, but just like a base of, these people were there for a very long time and now they feel disenfranchised.
United don't do enough in Manchester. City do a lot more in Manchester for Mancunians. And whether that's the City and the community coaching, United tend to ignore Manchester. They put on all these, they call it, what they call them? United in something or other events. And they put them on in New York, Delhi, South Africa. They've put one on in Tokyo, I believe. Certainly one in China. Australia's had one. And you're like, what about for the people who can't go to Old Trafford in Manchester? Like, where was the one for Wivenshaw? Where was the one in Eaton Park? Like, they could have done these events in Manchester and had the same response. Like, what's the logic behind that? Because one problem that I do have is because of the cost of tickets, because of how difficult it is to obtain a pair of tickets. You can get singles all day long, but if you want a pair of tickets for Old Trafford, good fucking luck, mate. And if you want to see anyone inside the top 10 or a European game, good fucking luck, mate. So how are people that are casual fans being introduced to football? We see it a little bit at the youth team, but let's face it, the atmosphere is fucking terrible to non-existent. So how are people being dragged into that culture of football? I would love to see the advent of safe standing, which seems to be seemingly at least being talked about seriously. I would love to see safe standing represent unallocated seating, because I think more than just the act of standing, it's standing with your friends where atmospheres are generated. Away games, I don't know about you, but when I go to an away game, I look at my ticket and I look where my mate's ticket is and I go, where are you? And he goes, where are you? And I go, all right, we'll go there. Like, we don't go, oh, I'm row P, so I'll see you in a fucking bit, mate. That never happens. And that's the reason why away games are generated like that, because you'll have clumps of mates, and yes, they might be standing in the gangway, and it might not be ideal, and I understand the safety concerns. But if you've got 1,000 tickets for an unallocated 1,000 seats or benches or whatever the fuck you want to call them in a safe standing area, there's not going to be any safety issues. 1,000 tickets for 1,000 people, 1,000 people are in there. There shouldn't be an issue. There should not be an issue. And I think...
No, I mean, yeah, especially as most of the time, actually, if you don't spook those fans, because actually groups of fans tend to act more like, I'm not calling them animals, but you know what I mean. Like, people tend to act a bit more on
mob mentality does take over.
Yeah,
undoubtedly.
Exactly. That's a great phrase for it. And then, but actually, what you tend to find is fans, after a lot of tragedies and a lot of close tragedies as well, are actually really good at organising themselves, because there's vocal people within the sets of fans who go, we're over here, lads, everyone over here, put some people over there, you guys need to sing, you need to put a banner over there. And most of the time, if you go there, it works really, really well. I do think there is a huge problem in football also. Like, I'm not a massive, I'm not a fan who goes to a lot of away games, but I've been to a fair few away Liverpool games in London because I've been able to get my hands on tickets. But the fact is that a lot of people from outside that group of fans talk about concerns of fans, and very rarely are they in the away end. Very rarely are they actually in that group, and very rarely does that group of fans get consulted. You've got people who are writing for Reuters or people who are writing for ESPN or whatever, and the fact is these guys probably do have some good solutions for safe standing or whatever. But, if you've been asked to write 1,000 words and you've not been to an away end, then I don't quite get why you're writing that 1,000 words.
And it's not necessarily the same at any club either.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
a huge point. That's a huge point. Is that actually, if there's diversity at home grounds, imagine the diversity at away grounds.
You can't, not just at away grounds, but from club to club. Like I said, no one represents a club, but there are certainly different identities of clubs. Like at Arsenal, you can buy an away season ticket. If you sold an away season ticket at United, you could probably pay your fucking mortgage off, because that's how hard that would be to get your hands on. Do you understand the graft people put in on a weekly basis trying to get aways? I'm sure you do as a Liverpool fan.
Yeah.
An away season ticket would be like insanity to think of as a United fan. And if they had 10, people would be bidding probably minimum 5 figures for them, because of guaranteeing I get every away. Yeah, I'll give you whatever it costs, because they're paying over the odds touts anyway.
Exactly. And that's the problem, is that actually I think that's another huge part of the game, is probably those other aspects where you have to pay all that extra money to be able to get there. There's a lot of things I think the clubs could certainly do a lot better there, transport wise, infrastructure wise. It's mainly infrastructure that the fans actually want, and what they don't want is an infrastructure which works against them, but works in the way that benefits the local police or the club. They want to be able to work with the local police, but again, I think it's a truism now. Not many people are actually thinking of the fans. Not many people are actually.
They're not, and that's why if you're watching this and you don't follow them, go and follow the Football Supporters Federation on Twitter or any social media, because they're actually talking a lot of sense. And no one represents any one club, but the Football Supporters Federation represents fans as a whole. And when you read about how many terrorism acts get used against football fans for the sheer benefit of helping the police out. There's always the horror stories which stand out, but the horror stories are worth talking about. I think it was a Stoke, and far be it from me to ever fucking defend Stoke on anything, but there was a Stoke fan, I believe, that was from... No, it was which fucking way round was it? A Manchester United fan from Stoke.
Right.
What the fucking way was it? I'm going to have to draw a picture of it to figure this out. But essentially, anyway, there was a guy that lived in a certain place.
Yeah.
And he supported a team that was from the place he was going to.
Yeah.
And the police... what the fucking hell was it, man? I'm pretty sure it was Stoke fans playing in Manchester. And he was from Manchester, but a Stoke fan. And they rounded all the Stoke fans up, put them on a coach and sent him to Stoke. He's like, I live in Manchester, where you just took me from, with my kid. And the police are like, yeah, go fuck yourself. Terrorism Act fucking 19 or whatever it is. And you're like, there's no way the police get away with fucking treating people like that. Yeah, where's the common sense? Why can't you speak to copper and go, there's my ID, I live, X, why am I going to Stoke? Why am I now having to also then either get a taxi, pay out my pocket, whatever it is, to get from Stoke? Because when they put these bubble matches on where you're not allowed if you're from I think Cardiff and say Birmingham or something have been a recent example of bubble matches. If you're from Birmingham and you're in Cardiff, it's now legal for them to just fucking remove you back to Birmingham.
Yeah.
What if you don't like football? What if you're just in Cardiff and you ask the time of a copper, excuse me mate, time is it? And they're like, oi, nicked. You're like,
why? I mean, but at that point, I think that you also find that very early on with laws, like it's misinterpretation on application as well, and that'll probably change. I mean, if you want change, the problem is if you want change, actually, it shouldn't be that difficult, but actually it is. And on a practical side for police as well, I don't think there's always a great level of understanding on every level. The fact is they're overstretched, etc. By the time this comes out, will your match with Arsenal Fan TV be out? Or when does that happen?
That will be out tomorrow for those watching on this.
On Wednesday?
So Wednesday, 4 p.m, our match with Arsenal Fan TV goes out.
Huge. That is huge.
It is huge.
How do you feel about Arsenal Fan TV? How do you feel about other fan channels? Do you... is it... Because I guess there's Arsenal Fan TV and then there's other fan channels, aren't there?
I wouldn't want my fan channel... Not that Full-Time Devil's mine. I mean, the one I am a part of.
Fan channel you're part of.
To be representing what they represent as I think Full Time Devils does a really good job of representing a range of opinions. We talk from 8-year-olds to 80-year-olds. We see the one end of the spectrum with a really irate sort of Andy Tate ranting style of stuff. We see the other spectrum of Dave, who goes super nerdy with everything, and we have literally everything in between. That is a match going and non-match going sort of voice of fans. Like we said earlier, the nobody represents United. But what I think Robbie has cultivated in a negative sense, he's cultivated the rant. The rant seems to be their thing, whereas I know that there's sensible and intellectual Arsenal fans, and I've had a few of them on here, and I think they've found a lot of success with the rant, and they've just pressed home with the rant more than the other style. Like, could you tell me anything apart from fan cams that Arsenal Fan TV do?
I mean, I do watch a little bit of Robbie's stuff, and I've said this a lot of times. Like, I like Robbie as a guy. I think the problem is for them, they're slightly stuck in the perception of other people. I know they do match reviews. I know they do the driving to the game because I watch that.
That's not why people tune in, though, is it? You know what I
I
mean?
mean, you can make an argument that there are certain sets of fans that tune in for that, but I get what your point is, and I've been very publicly critical of Robbie in the past, and we've had our own private chats about that, and probably we'll have those chats publicly at some point. But let's monetize that. And the point is. Public discourse is never going to... Well, it can go sometimes the way you want it to go. So I'd imagine there are a lot of people on Full Time Devils that originally thought of you as a ranter or thought of you as a different public figure. And I think the thing with you is you made a real concerted effort to move out of the way the way that some people saw you, because, I mean, you're quite a public upset because a lot of people jumped on the back of that and tried to upset you and other people over something which was actually maybe not the way it was portrayed. And I think that can be a very public wake-up for a lot of people. And, arguably you didn't deserve that. And I think a lot of people, within the industry will say the same. But maybe it was one of the best things that could have happened to you, because it actually means that you managed to go down a route which isn't just... I'm Stephen Howson, I'm big, I'm controversial, and I'm a bit of a wanker sometimes. You know what I mean? Whereas actually some other people haven't had that wake up because they're surrounded by people who go, keep going down that route. You know what I mean? Or,
I've always thought I like YouTube as a platform. I like talking about football. But and this might come as a shock to some of these guys because I don't say this publicly, although I do have this conversation. There's a shelf life on how long I'm going to be doing YouTube.
Yeah.
At least
BT have got that deal on the table, haven't they?
At least in the fan channel way, at least of doing things. So yeah. The clock is already ticking. It's already counting down in terms of when I exit fan channels. At least I might stick around with the podcast forever because I can potentially see myself if I can keep a steady flow of interesting guests like Laurence McKenna. I think I can. I prefer this long style of conversation rather than sound bites. That is more me. I like conversations. I like interesting conversations, and this for me isn't YouTube. This is iTunes. This is wherever it finds itself. It might be on YouTube, but it's not. It's not that. It's not a. Do you know when I say to you, it's a YouTube video? You know what I mean, don't you?
Yeah, totally. But then my idea about that is that, and this is partly where the problem with Arsenal Fan TV and every fan channel, not just Arsenal Fan TV, comes. The medium is the message. I don't think the structure of YouTube is necessarily geared towards making a fan channel a respectable channel. I don't even mean that through content. I mean, like, if Robbie puts up 15 videos of fans chatting, that's fantastic. Like, and within the Arsenal community, that's great. And arguably that's important. But what it does ignore is a huge part of being a fan is showing face to the opposition and sort of facing up and being those tough guys who, whatever stadium you go to, they don't want you there because you're great at chanting back to them or whatever. And Arsenal Fan TV is almost like the inside, so it's a bit like, well, actually, it was a really, really fucking shit game. Like, I didn't really enjoy it. And it's like, before that was exclusive to Arsenal fans, and Robbie's making a product for Arsenal fans, or at least he says he is. I trust that to some extent, and if it
well,
is true, then
I think in his heart that's what he's doing.
Exactly.
But I think that the reality
it would be naive
of that
to say that's all he's doing.
That they've transcended the Arsenal community. They became a meme towards the end of last season.
Yeah, well, I mean, even before that, I think a lot of people were sort of talking about that, acknowledging that.
Andy Tate did. Full-Time Devils did to an extent, and that might have been why we're in the position we're in now as a successful YouTube channel, is on the back of Andy Tate going into the millions on the 2 or 3 fan cams that he did with unbelievable one-liners. But as we said earlier,
it would be disingenuous to say that was the only reason people stick around, and you don't retain figures for that amount of time. And the same applies for Arsenal Fan TV. So then the issue comes then that YouTube's not a great place to curate that, because literally all you do is put up those videos. Those videos sit in the subscription box or sit on Twitter or get embedded or get clipped up or whatever. Actually, it'd be great if there was a space where you could curate fan content and put an article next to it or embed it within an article. Or maybe Robbie writes something that goes, after the game I spoke to blah, blah, blah. Time code, this was a really interesting comment I thought from him, blah, blah, blah. Maybe I'm giving away an idea, which is actually a good idea in the first place. You need to curate fan content better than it is already curated.
Rather than just blasting it and going, you figure it out, stupid.
Yeah. Also, though, because actually when you then say to those people, you figure it out, then we go, okay, well, we'll put the blocks together however we want then. And we'll go, because, if you give me 15 Lego bricks, Robbie might say to me, build that into a pyramid. I'll make it a cube because I want it to be a cube. Yeah. And if that cube looks silly with Ty's face on it or whoever's, maybe my agenda, and I'm not saying it's my agenda, but my agenda as a media maker might be, well, let's make Arsenal Fan TV look silly because we're on Sky or we're on BT Sport now.
Or if you're a football Twitter account called Raheem Sterlingisms, you want a banging tweet, and a banging tweet for you might be to clip up all the things that someone said, and then all the contradictory things that they said after that. Yeah. And that it's a 2,000 retweet, especially the back end of last season. You're looking at serious numbers on some of the stuff because it's short, it's concise, and there's no backstory with it. It happened with me when Pep Guardiola signed for City. And I spoke to the guy who actually did it, and I was like, listen, you didn't get Andy Tate, who is, in this sphere, the fucking most recognisable person, who has got a phrase, Barcelona style of play, get Guardiola. You didn't use that. You used me doing a shit sandwich. So I did a nice shit sandwich where I was like, Pep's pretty good at this, this, and this, and this, but... And then they cut it just before the but, where I said, I want Ryan Giggs, who's got 4 games experience of Guardiola and X, Y, and Z. But that's not what made their video. What made their video was me talking about Guardiola and then me mentioning all the news reports that was linking him to Manchester United. At no point I ever want him. But there's this meme out there that United fans really wanted Guardiola because they used me, Gaz. I can't remember who else was in it. It might have been Dave. But that's how that medium Dave, is. There's no context offered. There's no context given. It's these words edited in a way that makes people look, different to what the original format was. And that's definitely happened with Arsenal Fan TV. Absolutely. I have no sympathies with it because it's happened with me as well, and I don't expect anyone to have any fucking sympathy. Well,
surely you do have sympathies for it then, because you.
I am aware that anything that I can say can be clipped up in any fucking order and make me say anything that I did or didn't say.
But then for that reason, then, you surely connect that you empathise and sympathise.
I empathise. I understand it. I got no sympathy
but
for
you
it.
But you don't feel sympathy for them. Okay,
yeah, we know the game.
But then you can empathise for it, and arguably empathy and sympathy are two very similar things. Empathy is just more of a forced sympathy.
I got no sympathy in me, mate.
Yeah, but
to have sympathy, I would need a heart.
Okay, I mean that's fine. I can understand that, but then for that reason, it's about how fan channels are curated, and that's something I have a lot of discussions behind the scenes with. Maybe it's something I have times for, but yeah.
I think the technology has advanced so quickly that we don't know how to use it, and I think we're stuck between the way we've been fed sport and we've been fed opinion from pundits on one hand, and we've had fanzines and the job that they've done since they was created 20, 25, 30 years ago, and what they've got, and you're seeing a mishmash of the two because there is no barrier to entry with YouTube. Every single person watching this at home can create a YouTube channel in about 3 minutes and just start talking. There's no barrier. If you've got a smartphone that allows you to watch YouTube, you've got a smartphone that would allow you to produce YouTube. So
but let's not pretend let's not pretend it's that simple, though. Let's not pretend
it is that simple. Look how fucking massive your colleague is, Geordie. He literally just turned it on and started going off on YouTube.
But what I'm saying is that doesn't mean that everyone should set up a channel and start talking.
No, I'm just saying the barrier to entry is that low that everyone can, and because it's such an open marketplace, we're finding our feet as we're going along. We're feeling around in the dark. We see the old way of doing it. You've got the broadsheets, you've got Sky, you've got the establishment, and then you've got... I mean, look at football Twitter. Football Twitter is amazing at times. It's a nightmare, but it's also amazing at times. It's so powerful a movement that no one knows how this should be used, and you can't take it on because you fucking lose 100 times out of 100.
But then let's also say this. So my idea of curating a fan channel was, the first thing I said was, well, Robbie should write a blog that goes along with it. You embed the videos in it. That's sort of hark back to the broadsheet format where it's like, okay, well, let's write something. Let's put a couple of pictures alongside it. It's a progression of it, but it's sort of going back to that. And that is partly what fan channels lack, is that broadsheet, easy to digest, but going into some detail. Arguably, fan channel, and we've definitely gone up our own asses here, but fan channels are difficult to digest.
They are, but the beauty of them, the simplicity of them, and the beauty of them is that they don't need explaining. That it's a guy asks another guy a question, that guy gives his opinion, and without getting hoity-toity about it and maybe going into more depth. Some people would like that. Some people would benefit from that. But the beauty of them is that it's those bite-sized digests. It's the back page of the Mirror that says Anthony Marshall's a waste of money, which the article doesn't actually really back up. That's the problem.
Okay. And if you like that, then head over to Statman Dave's football channel, because there is in-depth there. I probably don't need to promo Dave. Everyone knows who Dave is in the first place.
They should on here.
Reddit. Yeah, if you have Reddit, then you definitely know who Dave is, because he does do great depth on United. There's a lot to be said and done there with Dave. Do you want me not promoting Dave so much, because Dave is great? So I think there's a long way to go in getting fans to talk. I also think YouTube comments is a great place for chat. But I also think, again, it's something else that YouTube can do more to curate and make into a better experience for a lot of people. There's
no conversation happens in YouTube comments.
Sometimes there is.
It's headlines.
It's it's very often it's headlines. It's also people just shouting back, or sort of like, and Brian and I have experienced this, when we approached the political side of things, sort of poked the beehive a little bit with Tommy Robinson and people like that, which is still sort of an arc which hasn't really ended for us on the podcast, because a lot of people liked to hear the political side of what had to be said. And we found there was a lot of people who got very, very angry and sort of, think we'll take, I don't know, they just got very angry. Let's put it that way. People get angry.
I find people's anger, because I get tons of it, and I don't understand where it is. Some people are like, you're a fucking wanker, and you go, can you tell me why? Can you point to the one thing I've said that you just completely disagreed with?
But surely that question back is exactly why you're a wanker.
I don't do it every time. I don't reply to everyone that fucking hammers me on Twitter either. If I'm doing nothing, I'll fucking engage in it a little bit, and I'll go back and forth with them.
Is there a little bit of you that gets a little bit upset with that, though? Like, do you ever feel? I mean,
yeah, because I try and be nice to people. I talk to City fans and Liverpool fans all the time online when they're cool and respectful. If someone just comes straight in with abuse, I'm just going to fucking block you. Unless you've got some complete backward way of thinking, which I can tear to pieces in 140 characters, then that's what you're getting. But if it's just abuse, I don't need to be seeing abuse. I would like to be fucking liked with people. I'm sure all of us would like to be fucking liked by people. I would like people to engage us on the ideas and thoughts that we have mostly around football. Because I think, as we've just sat here and fucking discussed for this hour or so, there's a lot of things that you can talk about with football. There's a lot of angles you can cover, and we've barely touched on what happens on the grass. We've spoken a lot about what goes on with fan channels, what goes on with policing. We've spoke about all of this other stuff, safe standing. I mean, we've covered all of these different areas because I think football's such a fucking massive thing that I like getting that other opinion. I like knowing what's it like for Liverpool fans. What's your opinion on safe standing because of obviously the tragedy that happened in your past? What's Celtic fans' experience with it because they've got a fucking banging little section which has allowed it? What's all these different? What are German fans? There's so many perspectives that I don't know all the answers. I only know what I've experienced and what I've read up. I like finding out, I like learning, and that's why I like chatting to people. And that you can find some fucking brilliantly engaging people that are worth a follow on Twitter. I make loads of lists, mate, and I have my tweet deck like a fucking big selection menu of all these different things that's going on. I've got analysts.
Which list did I make it into?
You're in a contributors one, which I just robbed from TFR.
Nice. Okay, fair enough. That's fair enough.
But I have all these different lists of people that I like looking at, and I like putting them all in these little fucking groups that I can see what's going on in a certain vein. And sometimes I have mad ideas that I see all these fucking crazy transfer tweets or memes and stuff like that, and I have a list with all them cranks in, and I like looking through them sometimes. They entertain me, and sometimes I feel a bit more fucking intellectual. I've had a fucking Weetabix in the morning, and I want to look through some of that shit.
You don't have one Weetabix.
Yo, I think there's such a widespread conversation. I've gone round in a massive circle here, but of course I want to be fucking liked. I don't like getting abuse for having an opinion, and ultimately that's what I don't throw abuse out on Twitter. I will respond with abuse if you hit me with it, but I don't usually fucking throw it out. Not even to Joey Barton, generally.
You know what? There's a long way to go. There's a lot of trendy ways of curating people's voices at the moment, and that's partly why I got into football. My interest in football I was never particularly good. I was always all right. I was never particularly good. I mean, Howson's seen me play. A few other people have seen me play. I'm fine. Do you know what I mean? But I always enjoyed watching it. I always enjoyed talking to people about it.
How did you get started with TFR?
Boltwood set it up.
Was you something to do with Boltwood when he was at Football Daily then?
So I used to do Football Daily weekly with Adam and Dave, and then we made the front three when he left Football Daily, because I think I heard from Neil that Neil was looking for a really good producer. And then I spoke to a couple of people around town and all sorts of things. And then like all sorts of stuff happened. And somehow Boltwood ended up with that job. And then said to me, you know, you're a reasonable little presenter, aren't you? Why don't you come over and do some stuff with TFR? There we are. I've not been on it for quite a while because obviously I've changed up their presenting roster, which is a great BBC Two presenting roster. So there's a lot of great names in there. But they're not a fan channel. It's not so much a fan channel anymore. It's more of a football content channel, I think what it was originally set out to do, I don't think this is insulting anyway. I think what it originally set out to do and what it does now are two very different things.
There's been a massive personnel change as well, and you know the ins and outs of all of that lot. But there's been a huge personnel
yeah,
change.
huge. I also think it slightly comes down to a lot of people and companies are currently finding out that it's not necessarily commercially viable to just do fan channel stuff or just go down one route. And I think, that's a huge issue because it means that as soon as people find out they can't make money out of it, and this happens on every level, whether you're working for a big company or a small company, it slightly takes the wind out of your sails a little bit. And I think that's happened with quite a few people in London because London's the bubble where a lot of people make their content. It's happened a lot recently. And it means that the focus a lot of these companies have shifted. And it's actually meant that a lot of people I used to get quite excited to speak to are now just talking about what top 10 can you do for me? What clickable stuff can you do for me?
And like we said earlier, I really want, and I know you do as well, I want to do that shit that takes me a week. Something that's a fucking brilliant, interesting story. And tell the fucking story. Again, the time constraints, the budget constraints, everything like that is against everybody with it. And
well, then maybe we should collaborate. Maybe if there's a comment if there's something from the comment section which comes out, then what's the first documentary that Howson and I should collaborate on and direct? I'd be interested to know what people would want to see because I think there's a lot of similarities between Liverpool and Manchester United as a club. There's massive histories between the two. and there's a lot of there's also a lot of animosity, but there's also a lot of links between those two cities. So there's subject matter there to be explored.
I think even just talking about the share of the championships in the English Football League, I think is an interesting enough story. How it lurched from Manchester to Liverpool, back to Manchester, and at the moment it's generally nowhere, I guess.
Well, it's in Manchester. If we were to put a probability.
Well, you've gone from this season, but if you last 3 seasons, you've gone Manchester, Leicester, London. So there's no consensus anywhere there. But I ended up where I am now because I used to post on forums, like I'm sure all of us do and still do, just writing on forums, never written anything, and then there was one day me and Ben, who I do my podcast with, we was texting each other so much over a transfer window. We was like, if we're this interested in United news, surely other people would be. Yeah. And we started a Manchester United website like that with nothing, and you can do it. I know a little bit of web design. I threw a website together. I fucking started seeing people want to write for us on Twitter, and before you knew it, we was doing 1 million hits a month on our website. And from that led to Full-Time Devils asking me to get involved on previews, asking me to come along and do fan cams, and and now I'm an integral part of the channel. But that isn't gonna be forever. I don't envisage being on camera. I do like behind the camera stuff. I like the filming, I like the editing, and I'm doing more of that. At some point, I will move on from Full-Time Devils, and who knows when that'll be.
Sad day for Full-Time Devils.
Or not.
The fact is as well that it's also good to leave. I think a lot of people, fan channels operate very similar to SNL in America, where it's like, if your favorite comedian doesn't quite make it into that escape velocity to, go on to do their own talk show, or, they're always behind the scenes guys, they sort of never make it out of that. They maybe get a little run of commercials with T-Mobile or something, but that's their one chance. And there are other people who, Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert left the Daily Show, all these kind of guys. You can relate it very similarly to fan channels and how independent those guys can end up being.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think if I did leave Devils, I wouldn't be competing with them in terms of content.
No, definitely not. But that's part of the point of SNL is actually most of those guys leave and they don't compete. They're actually. It's a different sphere.
Yeah, but I'm obviously someone that's been in love with football since the day I was first fucking dragged along to sit in the Stretford End, or stand in the Stretford End as it was, when it was still terracing, because that's how fucking old I am.
It's how old Howson is. How old is he? You don't need to know.
Old
as shit.
Fuck. I had a couple of years of the terracing before they knocked it down and threw the seats in. And it was a weird thing, man. Your dad used to just put me on the railings and then disappear into the fucking ether and come back at half time to go, "You right?" And I go, "Yeah," and you go, "All right," in a bit, and he'd fuck off again, and you're like, "Can you imagine even doing that to a kid now?"
You wouldn't do that to Jaden, would you? I suppose you could do that to Jaden, because Jaden looks like the kind of kid who could handle himself, but you still would sort of.
Jaden's a really intelligent kid, and I try and push the boundaries with what I allow him to do, because he starts secondary school. This is how fucking old I am. He starts secondary school in September. Yeah. And it's quite a way away from where we live, and it's going to be a train and a bus for him to get on and go.
Hey, that's what private school is.
He's not going to private school. I don't even know if there's any in this area. My mum's freaking out. My mum's absolutely freaking out. It's the same school I went to. And I'm like, I had to get to the same fucking school. It was 2 buses. It was a train and a bus for Jade. It was 2 buses for me. I'm like, I started at the same age he is, Yeah, but he's a baby though, and you're like, it's the same fucking age. My dad at 10 took his younger brother of 8 in the 70s to a United and Rangers game at Old Trafford on the buses. Yeah. What? Yeah. That's crazy. That is crazy.
That's a very different time. paedophiles still existed then, and sort of people who wanted to kill kids still existed then.
I reckon it was more prevalent than if you just fucking listen to the reports coming out.
I think it was probably. I think we'll probably find it's just as prevalent now. It's just that we found other ways to do it in our society rather than doing it through the BBC or ITV. But that's sort of the there is a nice side to that. Do you know? You probably could send a 10 and an 8-year-old now, because actually the likelihood of someone who's out to get those people.
They've also got mobile phones as well, which means that they're a million times safer rather than just kicking out the door and going, bye.
Yeah, now we have that context of a mobile phone, and we sort of think, you know, when you think back to the 70s, well, they could have called you. But actually, probably not. Like, that's what's actually really great about it.
But I guarantee if I just let Jayden go to Old Trafford on his own, I would probably have him taken off me.
Yeah, which is really quite weird because actually they've got family values at United, and you know they want to encourage kids to go.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean,
could you do that? Could you drop Jayden off one day? Say you know you were sick or whatever, and he could just go in on his own.
If I was meeting him at the ground, I wouldn't have an issue with it. I don't think. At the age he is now, he's just turned 11. At the age he is now,
could he legally go in? Could he legally go in at United, or does he have to be accompanied?
I don't know the law on that, which is crazy, isn't it, to think that? I don't know if you could do that, but Jayden's a sensible kid. I try and push the boundaries, keep sending him to the shops, keep sending him, let him go his haircut on his own. He's got to walk there, cross a few roads. Because let's face it, he's got to be getting public transport there and back on his own pretty soon. And you know,
do you let McCullough go and do this sort of thing?
I don't let McCullough do that sort of thing. No, McCullough's not ready for that just yet. No.
Yeah. He's not quite ready to even leave the hole.
No, and he's not punctual enough to be doing that on his own either.
You know what? That is a real issue with Adam McCullough. Yeah. And clearly that is why he's missed so many haircuts in recent years.
Right, Loz, I'm going to wrap it up there because this is going to take fucking days to encode as it is.
Very sorry.
You know the dance. And you're going darker by the second as well over there. Great lighting. So, thank you for joining us. You can catch Loz on the True Geordie podcast where he's kind enough to allow Geordie to name it and star in it with him, which is delightful.
Charity.
It's charitable of you. I think it's fantastic. Give him a follow on Twitter as well. Don't really tweet a lot, so, I mean...
I'm starting more now. I hit 20k, and that was a big boundary for me, so...
So we're going to get you talking now, are we? Okay.
I mean,
so he promises
just the fact Stephen Howson said anything about me, yeah, look, I mean, there it all is. Yeah, it's all there, isn't it, for you to see? Stephen Howson. Get Laurence back on. There you go. Already. Off you go. Sorry.
Give him a follow. Go check out his stuff with True Geordie as well. And give him a follow just when his own stuff comes out, because the documentaries that he did do on TFR, the Klopp one was very good. I really liked how it was shot.
Thank you. So Pochettino, we also did Conte, so we've had some good ones out there.
Want more of those. And I'm sure we'll see you fucking mooching around and probably at Old Trafford at some point this season. Nice one, mate.
Thanks, man.